Illyrian Serbia before the Roman Empire. The great ancient Serbian state of Serbia stretched along the eastern shores of the Adriatic Sea several centuries before the Roman conquest. Its capital was city of Sardis, today Shkodra. We call that Serbia along the Adriatic coast Adriatic Serbia or Illyrian Serbia in order to distinguish between it and other two Serbias, one in Dacia and in today's Romania and other in the north in Sarmatian Sea, which today is called the Baltic Sea. Illyrian Serbia reached its greatest reach during the reign of King or Emperor Argon from 240 to 230 BC. Zonara calls the state of Argon the Serbian Empire. Illyrian Serbia had in its composition the following provinces according to the modern names: Montenegro, Albania, Metohija, Raška, Bosna, Herzegovina, Dalmatia, Lika and Krbava, Kvarner and Istra. The entire Adriatic coast from Trieste to the Ionian Sea was owned by Serbia. Illyrian Serbia was conquered by Romans gradually in several wars from 229 to 168 BC. The Roman rule would not be fully established until 9th century. Now, the Romans called Serbia Illyria, a name they took from the Greeks. Illyrian Serbia was not only Serbian state on Helm Peninsula, so the Greeks used special names for each of them. One Serbian tribe from the area between the rivers Vojusha and Macha were called Illyrians. As this tribe from Illyrian Serbia was best known to the Greeks, they also called other Serbian tribes Illyrians west of that territory. After the collapse of the Roman Empire and after the collapse of Roman Illyria, the Byzantines called Illyria only the Duras Sea, that is, the landscape of the Illyrian tribe. The name Dalmatia, and according to him Dalmatia, is not the name of the special people. The name originated from the fortress of Dalma, which was the seat of the alliance of Serbian tribes in a fight against Romans around 160 BC. The Dalma fortress was located to the right of the source of Neretva River, about Nevesilje. The tribes of the Dalmatian alliance were called by Romans Dalmatians. Old writers often spoke of individual provinces of tribes, and less often about the people as a whole in national terms. They did not have the same understanding of the nation as we do today. The Serbian name is mentioned in several ways, and some examples are quite distant from the modern form. Serbi, Serabi, Sorabi, Sorobi, Sordi, Sordiski, Skordiski, Serdi, Sardi, Ardi, without the initial letter S in recent editions of ancient writers in West. Sorobati, Saromati, and Sarmatians in addition, Serbs are often referred to as Illyrians, Dalmatians, or Venetians. In some Greek writers, Serbs are also mentioned as Spori, Suri, and Sabiri. Herodotus is still in 5th century BC determined that Veneti and Illyrians are of the same people. Geographer Ptolemy of Alexandria, the 2nd century AD, says that the Venedi, are the great people who inhabit a good part of Sarmatia. Sarmatia means northern Serbia, and the Serbs in it are called Veneti. At that time, there were other people in northern Serbia besides Serbs. Mauro Urbini, 16th century writer, says, "These Veneti, are today's Slavs." Eusebius Pamphil writes in 4th century that Tiberius defeated the Sarmatians and Dalmatians. Hermann Contract writes the same in his chronicle from 11th century. The Dalmatians defeated by Tiberius are Sarmatians and also confirmed by Ekehard from the 12th century in his chronicle. M1 Floriakensky in 11th century says, "In a land of Slavs called the Veneti." John Kinamos, the writer of the 12th century, says, "The Serbs, who are like the Dalmatian people, built the fortress of Ras. Laonik Kalkokondila, a writer from 15th century, writes about Emperor Dushan and says that he intended to create a European empire of Illyrian people. Then further he says, people called Mesians, Illyrians and Sarmatians speak the same language. F.G. Bergman, in his work Scythians, says, under the Sarmatians all Slavs are included. Eprico de Saint-Marie considers the Sarmatians to be the ancestors of the Southern Slavs, which he talks about in his work Southern Slavs. Ravensky Anonymous, a writer of cosmography from the middle of the 7th century, says that there were 3 Serbias, one next to Greece, and other in Dacia and third in Sarmatia, next to the Sarmatian Sea. By the first Serbia, which we called Illyrian, the Anonymous of Ravenna also means Old Macedonia. The other Serbia, he says, was the homeland of the ancient Dacians. The third is the homeland of the Sarmatians. That the Illyrians are Serbs, that is, that the Serbs are Illyrians, that is, that they are 2 names for one and the same people, this is also testified by Appian from Alexandria from the 1st century, a famous writer of the history of the Roman Empire. Decange shows how the latter form of Skordi and Skordiski emerged from Appian's form of the Serbian name Skordiski. Decange previously says that the inhabitants of the ancient Illyria were Illyrians, Liburnians, Iapods, Istrians, and Skordiski. Under that distorted name, Decange found Serbs in Old Macedonia and Upper Mesia. Eprico de Saint-Marie says that these Skordiski were so numerous in Roman times that they inhabited Illyria, Pannonia, Mesia, and Thrace. He then mentions them in today's Herzegovina, Montenegro, Bosnia, Kosovo and Metohija, and Macedonia. All that we have stated clearly shows that Serbs were inhabitants in all Serbian provinces in which they still live today, long before the Roman conquest of Serbia. The old towns, whose names derive directly from the Serbian national name, are Serdica or Sardica, today's Sofia, Sarda, Sorda or Skodra, today's Shkodra, Sardona or Skardona, today's Skradin, Sarit, Seralium or Seraljo, today's Sarajevo, Roman Serbino, Serbinum, and in contemporary editions of ancient writers in the West, Servitium, and with Ptolemy Serbinon, that is Serbinovo, is today's Zagreb, which was the main port of the Roman fleet on the Sava. Then Srbica on the river Bistrica in Greece, and 2 Srbicas in Old Macedonia, the Roman Sarabantia in Pannonia, and the city of Serbion, Sirmion the Greek, and the Sirmium Roman, today's Sremska Mitrovica. The mountain range from Stari Vlah to Durmitor and from Shar mountains in the south, which is located to the middle of the Serbian land, was called in the Old and Middle Ages Serbian mountains, Sardonici mountains, Montes, Skordus Sive Skordiske Montes. Decange calls the mountain range simply Mountains of Serbia and says that the old Principality of Trebinje stretched from the mountains of Serbia, in fact to Durmitor, as far as the old Herzegovina, Servia Montes. And finally, let's mention once again Prico de Saint-Marie, who also says that Argon was Serbian king and that the Romans fought with Serbs in Neretva Valley River. Here I just want to mention that the name of the king, more precisely the emperor, Agron, was changed and that his real name was similar to this. It is a special topic that deserves wider treatment.